Andrew and AJ.
Presented by the AEP.
You're tuned into Too Sweet Elite with Andrew and... You're tuned into Too Sweet Elite with Andrew and AJ.
Presented by the AEP.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of Too Sweet Elite. You're here with your boys, Big Match AJ and All Elite Andy, for another All Elite Wrestling dedicated podcast. I'm very excited to talk about this week's Dynamite, but before we get into that, AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm annoyed because of my dumb computer, but other than that, I'm good. I'm not too much going on, though.
That's what's up, man. I have had a little bit going on. That's why we unfortunately are doing the podcast today rather than yesterday as promised, because I just totally spaced out the fact that my daughter had friends coming over yesterday, and once we add a whole bunch more kids to the mix, it gets a little bit hectic. And
kids are loud.
Well, yeah, and now I've moved my office area, you could call it. Like, all of this setup has been in my living room, which has taken up a ton of space for the last however many months. So recently we have had more room in our place, so Amara got her own room, but she is splitting it with me for an office space. So when you have the kids come over and they're splitting the office space, it is very loud, impossible to do a podcast. So we had to push things to today, but I'm still excited to talk about AEW and all things related. So let's jump into things. This week the ratings were not the best, and that was anticipated by basically everyone who knows what to expect about a date change, a Friday night change of all things, a late Friday night change. I mean, this, again, I anticipated it. There were plenty of people on social media, either naysayers or e-drones or whatever you want to call them, trying to spin this into a major negative. It's obviously a negative. There's no positive way to spin going from 900, a million a couple weeks ago to this. But what were your thoughts when you saw it?
Like you said, I wasn't like, oh no, that couldn't have happened. Like, it was bad though. It was worse than I thought it was going to be. But I'm one of those people who probably like 100, 200 other thousand people recorded it on their DVR because it was late. So like, I don't expect those. Like, if you include the DVR numbers whenever those come out, I imagine it's not as bad as it looks. Also, it is still down like I think 38%.
Well, and I don't even know. It's been so many days since then that those numbers might already be factored in. I obviously wouldn't know, but it's an interesting thing.
It is. It's interesting. I know from what I heard, they were hoping to get a lead-in from SmackDown. That didn't happen. Because I'm guessing
that is such a silly thought to me too. I get the concept, but it doesn't translate to me. Like, people don't really want to watch 4 hours of wrestling. That's my biggest takeaway. It has nothing to do with the fact that there's no crossover fans or anything. They just don't. I mean, you were better off going head to head and letting people flip-flop, to be totally honest.
Perfectly honest, yeah, because you're going to get more viewers that way going against SmackDown than going right after it. Because also, a lot of people watching SmackDown aren't even WWE fans. They're just have it on Fox.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they get huge numbers because Fox is a huge channel. So, I mean, it doesn't really translate to me. But, you know, I'm hoping next week will be better. I don't expect it to, really, though.
I mean, they have a decent amount leading into it, but I kind of agree with you. And my big takeaway with all of this is, like, I was essentially unfazed. I saw 500,000. I was like, that sucks, but I totally am not surprised at all. I think this Friday night number had such a small leeway for good or bad in how people were going to take it. Because I think if it did 650, was able to bring in that much of their audience on a Friday night, would have all of a sudden looked like a massive success. Now it's at 500,000, and people are looking at it as a major defeat. And I think it's just kind of average in what I would have anticipated. Definitely on the low end of what you anticipate, but still not anything massively crazy. It's a disappointing thing. I think this shows them what to expect going to TBS, going on Friday nights when they do the TBS stuff as well. So I think it's good. I think it's good to see. I don't really know how it compared to the rest of the stuff on Friday night that night, like because it's typically in the top 10. So if it was still in the top 10 and just no one watches TV on Friday nights, then that makes sense. But if it fell like into the 30s or something, it's a tough situation, and it's what is going to happen with sports, and it's kind of the exact reason why they did the switch to TBS. It's so they don't have to deal with this as often, and by the time that the games are coming, people are already used to being on TBS. It's not just a random preemption to that channel. So I think it's interesting. I think it would be interesting to run an episode of Dynamite on a Wednesday on TBS opposing the playoffs. Like, you know what to expect next year, right?
Mm-hmm. I can't find the chart, and that tells me they probably didn't chart.
Or there
So
just might not be a chart out, because it's not like their
That's
number was
also
that terrible. Especially because, like I said, Friday nights are awful for
Well, I know
probably television
NXT, when they
watching
got
across
around
the board.
500,000, they weren't charting.
Yeah, Fridays are different though, so we'll see.
That's true.
Overall, like I said, it's not a crazy thing to me. I think that this was it's a good thing to find out this information early on before the official transition comes, and that's why I would like to see them try just let's throw it on TBS for the last 2 weeks of the playoffs on Wednesday and let people get back into their casual viewing habit with an excuse for low numbers. So when it comes back on TNT, hopefully they're boosted back up. Because think about it, when they switch from Friday back to Wednesday in July probably, people aren't going to, they're going to know, but they're not going to remember so much that it's on Wednesdays. It's going to give people a lot of time to lose that habit. So if you go for the last 2 weeks of the playoffs, opposing the playoffs, sure, you're going to get a shitty number on TBS against the NBA playoffs when things are
They're going to get a shitty number anyway.
Really heating up. But yeah, exactly. You're going to get a shitty number anyways. So let's see what you can pull on TBS on the regular night and get people back into the habit of watching on Wednesday nights. I don't think they'll do it, but I think they should do it that way.
I completely agree that they should, and I wouldn't put it past them that they would be like, hey, can we go on TBS, or at least try to, because if it's
They're
not
not
working,
always so reactionary, but I think this is a moment to not necessarily be reactionary, but just try something new.
yeah.
Like,
Well, I think next week will be really indicative of, like, do we need to make a change?
I agree. And next week's card is pretty stacked, I think, in comparison to last week's card. So I think that we could see it uptick, and that would be obviously a positive overall. We'll see how it all plays out, though. In a little bit of continued negative news, Kong and Awesome Kong and Shauna, their contracts have not been renewed. There was some speculation going on last week because their profiles have been removed from the AEW roster page. I think Awesome Kong especially is one that, I think it was just the circumstances. She probably has a lot going on otherwise, and that's kind of been the story with Awesome Kong when she really started to break out into a mainstream success outside of Impact, really on WWE, and now with AEW, where we could have hoped to see some big moments. They just almost never came. Unfortunate that we don't get to see any potential from that really come to fruition, because Kong in AEW was awesome. It wasn't a lot. We didn't get a lot. I think it could have been. Yeah, no pun intended. But I think it could be cool to see her eventually return sometime. She's someone I had completely forgotten about. But she just would definitely be a great part of that roster, even if not as like even maybe as a commentator. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, I would love her in a production role or something, because she has a lot of value in wrestling. And I know, like, last time, like, the show I went to, and this is the only reason I remembered because it was the show I went to, she was too banged up to wrestle, and apparently after that came out, a lot of things came out about her being too banged up to wrestle. So if that's the case, like, she doesn't have to wrestle. Like, you have Mark Henry being analyst or whatever. You can have Awesome Kong do something, and you can have her help these women who aren't, a little more green around the gills. What actually surprises me more is Shana. I never know how to pronounce her name. She's the Goku lady, right?
Yeah.
Goku lady left?
Yeah, this one doesn't surprise me as much because there was some just controversy surrounding her over, not really recently, but a couple of months back, due to some stuff I have absolutely no idea about, so I'm not even going to try and remember, but it was just controversial, politically related stuff that she probably had more of a reason to offer her input because of where she grew up or where she lives. Or lived. I don't really know the whole scope of it, but she got a lot of blowback for it from social media, which also might have been justified. Like I said, I don't understand the whole scope of it, but in seeing that happen a couple months ago, she did return and work a couple of matches, but she was never like the best talent that you could possibly see in the women's division. And from that aspect, I'm just not surprised. It's not to say I was hoping she'd get released. I thought she was so awful she deserved to get released. It's just like, this is not a surprising release for me.
I thought they were gonna, like, try to train her up, and because she had potential, I thought. But I'm again, like you said, I'm not like, oh no.
Well, and she's one, like, I don't know what her situation during the pandemic was. Like, perhaps she went home and was unable, because we didn't see her a ton during the pandemic.
no, we
She reminds me of someone who was kind of getting a little bit of hype right before the pandemic. Shaza McKenzie. There was a bunch of stuff about Sign Shaza. I had actually interviewed Saja at one of the Starcasts, and she had all this hype going. And then she ended up having to like leave because of the pandemic, and it was one of those decisions where it's like, do I want to stay here and have uncertainty of work, or do I want to go home and be with my family in the middle of this pandemic? So that's what happened. She went home, of course, which makes sense, and then I lost a ton of steam. Sort of the same situation as Shauna. If either of them had been able to stay, the amount that they would have been utilized, their whole trajectory in AEW might be changed, but you can't blame them for making that decision whatsoever. But I just wasn't surprised about this release. I also really wasn't surprised about Kong's release because she hasn't been involved as much.
Yeah.
She was a great talent. I'm not super sure how she is on the mic. Like, can she handle commentary? Can she handle a manager role, perhaps? I think she could.
She's an actor.
I was gonna say she's an actor. She was in Glow. I feel like she had, and I feel like from what I can remember, what she's done on the mic has been good. So I feel like she really could be a good mouthpiece for someone in the females division, or even perhaps the male division. Like, you get some larger than life character managed by Awesome Kong, that could be a really interesting dynamic.
Sure.
But that's not something that's happening right now, and obviously with her contract not being renewed, there may be more to it, because it was like, oh, she's working Glow, but then the Glow production wrapped because it ended up getting canceled, and she obviously didn't return. So it's probably more injury related, like you had speculated. And in relation to injuries, our boy, the bad boy, Joey Janela, suffered an injury over the last week or so, unfortunately having to pull out of his foreseeable Game Changer Wrestling appearances over the next month, which really bums me out because I was going to Laramie. I am going to Laramie, and was hoping to see Janela wrestle.
He might still be there.
He's going to be there. He said he's going to do commentary. So,
yeah.
But shout out to our boy. Quick little injury update there.
What's the injury? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it was something with his leg, but I'm
finding out.
So it's a tough spot for him. He has been getting a little bit of steam behind him. He's been getting more opportunity to cut some promos. I think what he's delivered in the ring has offered him more opportunities just kind of going forward. I think it might have been on Dark Elevation where he cut a promo talking to Alex Marvez. And this is the one time I'll probably ever say this. Alex Marvez made that segment for me because it was really kind of awkward where Joey's trying to find himself as this, like, almost Kurt Cobain, but like crazy modern type character because of his look mixed with his attitude. And it's very interesting to me, but it's not connecting entirely because he's talking to Marvez about, Marvez is like, I actually texted you today about meeting you at the beach for the bad boy party. And Joey's like, oh, I don't get reception on the beach, but I got your text when I left the beach. Tomorrow, let's go to Big Milk or something, some strip club he's talking about. And that part didn't hit until the end of the segment when Marvez is like, Milkers, and it just popped me. I was like, he made it. Like, thank you, Marvez, for taking this awkward situation, making it funny. I think Joey's really starting to find himself, though, and hopefully he gets some more mic time with his injury. They're definitely doing something with him and Sonny on Dark. So, if anything, I'm excited that he's a reason to tune into Dark. Like, there's a storyline purpose to tune into Dark, and it's involved with our guy.
The Dark Knight, Joey Janela. I looked it up. His injury is undisclosed, and he just said he had an injury on Twitter. He didn't say what it was. I'm guessing that means it's probably not too bad, or it's probably really bad. One of the two.
Well, he said he could or should he anticipates being back for Game Changer in July for their shows in Texas. But he also said that his test hadn't necessarily been completed. Like, he was still trying to find out exactly what the severity of the injury was. And I think it was something that I had seen. I don't know what was he involved in the last week. It must have been an episode of Dark or
Hangman.
Hangman. I'd seen him just take like a bump that looked a little bit out of the ordinary. That people were speculating injury early on, so when I heard injury, I wasn't too shocked about it. But
Joey Janela is one of those guys who will work injured or work not telling anybody how bad the injury is, though.
Yeah,
so it's hard to tell with him.
So if it is like an injury that he's letting people know about, it could be a little bit more severe, like you're saying. So hopefully not. Wishing the best for Joey. Excited to hopefully see and meet up with him at Game Changer. Potentially get another interview with my guy, like previously.
Yeah.
What else do we gotta talk about? Oh, Rampage is going to be starting live when they come out on Fridays, so that's one positive to them doing the Friday night show, and something that they really will, I feel like, have to do, because if there's a taped show on Fridays, it's even less likely that people will tune in, because you could just read the results. I understand there's probably a hefty production cost for this, but I feel like it's a necessity.
hmm I agree. I'm surprised a little bit that this show is live because it's late.
Hmm.
I mean, it's only an hour, but like it seems weird to be like everybody come out at 10 p.m. and I'm guessing they're gonna do shit before. Obviously, they're gonna do
Probably tape
like
Dark Elevation and
yeah.
Dark.
So it won't be like miserable. But it's like wow, that's like your people are gonna be leaving like 11 for an hour long show.
They
That's
could just
crazy.
put a different aesthetic to it though, and make it
That's
just
true.
feel like something totally cooler per se to be at.
Like Wrestling Society X.
Yeah, dude. Or like I'm thinking more like Janela's Spring Break, just the
That would be
vibes
bad.
you got at Janela's Spring Break with those late night shows. I think that's hard to replicate on television, especially it's only 10 o'clock on a Friday night. But we'll see what their plans are, because you're definitely not wrong. Maybe they just run a ton of like West Coast shows
That's
in
what I
order
was
to do
thinking. I was
that.
gonna
But
say that. Yeah, like just go to California and like Oregon and Washington and all that shit and do all that.
yeah, I'm very excited to see what they do coming out of the pandemic, especially with stuff like Dark and Dark Elevation. Do they make the opportunity to like maybe leave a Jacksonville home base, because it must not be too expensive to tape in Daly's place, and like let a base of those guys who have been there for a while, the Baron Blacks, the Sean Deans, the Fuego del Sols, mix it up with some people like that they might be bringing up the roster or signing, and like sort of like their NXT essentially. If they
hmm
try something like that for Dark or Dark Elevation, and the Dark and Dark Elevation this week were just very very good to have fans back. I forgot how the vibe of these
I
shows.
caught some of it. Yeah.
Dude, I watched Dark Elevation almost the whole thing because it was just so electric to have the crowd back. And you knew who was going to win each match, but because the crowd was so hyped up to see these people for the first time, Varsity Blondes
It was
got a
fun for
great
the pops.
reaction. The
Yeah.
Jungle Boy reaction was spectacular, and that was before he won the Battle Royal. I was almost speculating, like, did Tony Khan see this reaction and say, It's time"? Like maybe the plan was Christian and someone else is the final two, but that Jungle Boy reaction was just too intense that he knew it had to be done now. I don't know. I think it was probably planned before that, but nonetheless, the reactions on those dark shows were great. Like it was what you need on that show, and they can't count on it every time, even when they have fans back. But it was cool to have for this.
I don't know if they can't count on it every time. I think the pops might get louder because they're going to bigger places.
You might be
Like
right.
that Jungle Boy pop is crazy. People love Jungle Boy, and also this crowd is like you got to remember, like people flew in from all over to go to the show. Well, these shows.
Hmm.
So like it is pretty indicative. I feel like, yeah, it's hardcore fans, but it's also like a lot of people try to get to these shows.
True.
So
That is true. They worked hard to get to these shows, and I think at the live show, like the vibe at every Dynamite, and I think back to the Denver one because I think that one might have been one of the more lackluster, if you can even put it that way, crowds, because they were still into it, but it's still Denver, it's still the Midwest, so there's not as big of a wrestling scene here, I think,
yeah.
and still, like, the crowds were very receptive to everything at that point in time. So as we get back into touring, as we get back into some fans seeing AEW for the first time, I think it's going to become very entertaining. And you're probably right. Like, Dark and Dark Elevation will continue to be entertaining as long as they have fans. I think that is something that they should work pretty hard on. Like, maybe not going above and beyond to have like huge arenas, but trying to find the right type of venues. I know that they had discussed doing more than just Daly's Place as the only amphitheater, like doing this more consistently, so you don't have to sell out 10,000, even 8,000 every week. You could do something a little bit smaller and still get that sound that they got at the shows this week. So I hope that they continue on that path, and that would make sense, especially as pandemic makes stuff where you have to slowly open up anyway. It seemed like it'd be a smart way to go.
If I remember, we were talking about them doing that before the pandemic, anyways, running smaller places, like going to like Reseda and like going to like the place where they run Defy and or just like these arenas that aren't big but like are really cool. Like
Hmm.
they're small and they're fun because they're compact and it gives you a different feel.
Yeah, it would be interesting just to see how some of this stuff runs on television. Like, I think that that the ballroom they started doing PWG in down the stretch could be something that could translate into something you put on TV. You obviously don't want to do some of the indie bingo halls, but
Yeah, no.
anything just with a smaller capacity where you're able to just, the fans that are there are all diehard. It's the ones that really want to be there type of thing, and every seat is packed. And I think that we will get back to that very soon. So, last bit of news to talk about is Lio Rush is in on a handshake deal. I'm not sure if we covered it on the last show. I think we speculated, weren't too sure, but Tony Khan did confirm in his post Double or Nothing press conference that Lio was just brought in as sort of like a per appearance deal type of thing. So another kind of interesting relationship deal with NJPW here, really, by featuring Lio. So
Yeah, it's very similar to me to the Danny Limelight situation, except they've made him the Joker. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They made him the Joker, and it's like, why are you gonna do that if he's not like gonna be here for? I don't know. Anyways, that
Here's
does, in
why, though,
retrospect,
because
make
you
me a
can
little
make
upset.
they have now established that should be a surprising, entertaining spot, but it's not always going to be this huge surprise return. It's not like where WWE early on, almost in those Royal Rumbles, utilized some of the best surprise entrants, some of the best older entrants you could use, so that they almost had to keep reusing them year after year because you couldn't get anything else that was really special. AEW is making it so, like, yes, sometimes it's going to be a huge deal, but sometimes it's just going to be this dude from another company that we happen to bring in, and maybe next time it's Okada. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that. I was like, I
It's
don't
the
know.
same as roll-up finishes. We're not going to love it, but it's going to help program
I like
us
roll-up
to...
finishes.
But did we love them early on? I mean, you
I
might
did.
have. It took me a while to really understand and appreciate them, to where at the pay-per-view when people were bitching about it, Kenny winning that way, I was like, this is AEW, bruh. Like, that's what I expected. This is actually a great finish. But yeah, I think that this is a cool way to just reprogram people. And I think Leo, I hope he appears more for AEW. Otherwise, I will agree more. Even though I don't hate like having just a random one-shot appearance for the Battle Royal. I don't hate that, but
As long as he makes dates, you're right. I'll be fine with that. Like, that's fine.
I would rather he make dates. I would rather he, like, even if it's just an episode of Dark against
Just
Danny
top thing, that's
Limelight, like
fine.
that would be wicked. They would have a
Oh
great
yeah, or
match.
like Takeshita, whatever you want to do. As long as he wrestles, that's all I want.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, I did roll-up finishes with my action figures 90% of the time.
Fair
So
enough, dude.
pretty, I'm into it.
And the last bit on Leo is I think that he would have had a little bit more time if it was just that one shot. I think we might see more of him sooner than later just because of that. That's
Yeah.
just my random thinking. But he was only in there for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and maybe I'm over
No,
exaggerating.
no, it was very quick.
And so that's the news that we have that we remember for this week. I'm sure there was one or two other things that went down that we didn't completely remember. Definitely check out Be Elite and Sammy's vlog. They were especially awesome this week with all of the backstage shenanigans with the Double or Nothing pay-per-view and getting to see like a fan perspective while also seeing the wrestler's perspective. I think that these were some of the best episodes of either vlog. Made me really appreciate both of them. It's cool to see Sammy's perspective leading into his big night, right, where he closed out the pay-per-view winning in the main event after last year getting destroyed in the main event. His girlfriend was there for like the first time or one of the first times, so
Aw.
that was really cool. Really cool moment. So make sure you guys check all of those out. Let's talk about this week's Dynamite. We got Christian and Jungle Boy teaming up for the first time to take on Private Party. They announced this just yesterday, I believe. I'm pumped for this one.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
gonna be
fucking
fun.
sweet.
I like the idea of Christian teaming up with Jungle Boy. I like that Christian is doing everything that we like speculated on. He's just gonna put people over and give them rubs and all that good shit that you should do when you're like 45.
Christian the rub giver out here.
Yeah, the rubber.
I'm with you though. Like, I'm glad that this is what he's doing. Him being paired with Jungle Boy, something about it just makes all the sense in the world. Feels like Sting and Darby, but like just feels great to me. And I think this is going to be really interesting, really compelling for these two. And who knows, right? Like, maybe we see a Christian Cage heel turn and he destroys Jungle Boy. And I think that could be interesting if that happens at some point. Obviously not in this match, but at some point down the line, because of the storyline that would give Jungle Boy to work, right? That's a main event storyline you can finish up at the pay-per-view, where perhaps Jungle Boy loses to Kenny Omega, and Christian is so mad that this young buck that he was trying to build up. I was doing everything to get you hyped up, kid. I did everything I could, and you still just came up short because you're not as good as us Canadians. And so he destroys Jungle Boy post match, and leads to a feud with those two. Like, what better feud can Jungle Boy? What better feud can Jungle Boy have for 2 or 3 months? Honestly.
No, for sure. That'd be great. I don't know if I'm expecting it because I don't know if they still are hoping for Ricky Starks to. I don't know what they're doing with that. That's my concern. I don't know what's going on with Ricky Starks and Christian because they are obviously leading to something with that, and then that got cut short, or maybe it didn't. I don't know. And if he does do a program with Jungle Boy, though, I will certainly not be upset. That sounds fucking awesome.
It's off the wall speculation, right? Like, a Christian isn't someone I anticipate them turning heel this quickly into his tenure, but it could be really interesting. Like, the story I just broke down, I think is pretty compelling in wrestling content, but
we've done that a lot though, where we've made good ass stories that they'll never use.
But we've predicted some stuff that they did use where it almost felt like they were tuning in. So yeah, it goes both ways. But regardless of how this goes down, Christian being with Jungle Boy is a great thing. I just think that Jungle Boy could fare pretty well from an extended feud with a guy like Christian, like something a little more drawn out. Again, not what I'm anticipating, but still. And this match is going to be fun. Private Party, and something I was thinking earlier today is, I'm glad Private Party got that early win over the Young Bucks. We talk about significant victories on here a lot. That one is one that will hold true for them forever, because while I don't think they're going to win this match, they have that glimmer of hope just because of that, I feel like. Like, they've won important matches out of nowhere where maybe, I mean, Jungle Boy does need to go into his title match as a victory, but still, maybe.
No, for sure. I think, one, that was a great move because that match ruled. And two, it does legitimize them a bit. Like, it definitely does, because they beat the Young Bucks. And if you talk about that now when the Young Bucks hold the titles, that even makes it sound even bigger. Like, hey, they beat the champs.
Yeah. And then another match I'm excited for. This one, I called it a couple weeks ago. Dustin Rhodes versus Nick Comoroto in a bull rope match. I did think that this would be like more of a buy-in type situation where you built up to this a little more. They have built to it. Like, there's reason to do it. I just thought there would be a little more to this. Hoping Comoroto comes out strong here.
That's why I'm not excited for it. I really feel like they're going to put Dustin over Nick Comoroto, and I feel like they're going to put Cody Rhodes and Lee Johnson over Go-Go and QT Marshall, and this team looks stupid.
They would definitely be established as the Ultra Jobber Squad if that happens. I don't think so. I think that we actually get the alternative. I think that Nick Comoroto wins here. Looks like just a house of destruction up against Dustin Rhodes. I do think Dustin gives up a good fight, and I think this just becomes one of those matches where you're like, whoa, this is a great match for Dynamite. We'll see. We'll have to see what Comoroto has in him, right? Because this is one of his first real opportunities in a match of this just level. I've seen him in quite a few squashes and stuff, but up against someone like Dustin, and Dustin's a pro, so
with the stipulation,
so I think this could be fun.
Deal. And stipulation, Dustin Rhodes, TV match, like, it's a big deal, I'd say so, which is why it makes sense to put him over. But I have WWE PTSD, and I honestly feel like it's like Nexus or some shit where it's just like everybody fucking loses.
Everybody's gonna get jobbed out now. We'll see. I think this could be their opportunity. And you mentioned Cody Rhodes teaming up with Lee Johnson to take on Go-Go and QT Marshall. QT back from his wrist injury, so that's good to see. I disagree here. I think Lee Johnson is in this one to lose, and that's almost why I'm bummed out about it. Like, I'm a big Lee Johnson fan now after getting the opportunity to read up on him and learn about him more last week for WrestleJoy. I became a bigger fan of his, and now he's about to get squashed by a Go-Go and QT Marshall because he's going to be the guy who has to take the pin.
Yeah, that would make sense, but also, I don't know, you could have Anthony Ogogo lose, have QT Marshall lose to Lee Johnson and give Lee Johnson the rub. I feel like that's more likely what they're going to do. I feel like they're going to put Lee Johnson over this whole entire stable because they really like Lee Johnson, or rather, somebody really likes Lee Johnson.
I like Lee Johnson, brother, so who knows? I think that you could be onto something there, though. We'll see. That would be unfortunate. I think a Go-Go just has way too much, and so does Lee, for that fact.
That's not a knock on Johnson, by the way. I like Lee Johnson.
He's young and has a great future, right? Like, you could just see it on him. But a Go-Go just feels like a legitimate star almost right now. Like, it feels like they wouldn't have had to do too much to really put him in a top position, and maybe that's why they're hesitant, because maybe he's good, but not necessarily ready for that.
I know oh, AEW would never like listen to the wrestling media to decide their booking, but like they shit on Anthony Ogogo. Everybody shit on Anthony Ogogo except for us. I found because I
Until
was
the
like, I
match,
didn't
but
think he
now
was
that the
that bad.
matches happened, people really, really praised
No, I
it.
mean the match. I like Meltzer and Alvarez were shitting on him, and I was
Oh,
like,
really?
really? They hate him.
Hmm.
Wow.
That's interesting. I saw a lot of people praising it, especially on social media, giving him a lot of credit for doing so well in that match, but definitely not loving the finish of
They
it. So,
wanted it to be 6 minutes because it was too long at 10. I was like, oh my God.
gee, those are some of the times where I end up listening to Meltzer and them getting heated. Like we probably get some of our podcast listeners when we have some hot takes. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
I thought that he delivered pretty well. I do.
I did too.
I can understand people kind of getting pulled out of the match and it feeling a little long, despite the fact it wasn't long. I don't think they needed to cut down time. I think they could have just done a little more to make it more interesting, and that probably would have been a go beating the shit out of Cody. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. It's too late for that. Mark Henry will also make his first AEW Dynamite appearance. Probably just going to come out and talk some guys up. Should be interesting, but probably not anything too crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll just be like, hello, like the big show, kind of like, hey, what's up? And maybe he'll have an announcement to make, which will be like something to make. Oh, Mark Henry's cool.
That his good friend Daniel Bryan has officially signed with AEW. They're waiting
No,
for
Bryan
it to
Danielson,
be.
dude.
They're waiting for it to be on Friday night TNT, so that way they could bring in the viewers. That would pop a number.
That would pop a number for sure.
And then Britt Baker will also be holding a celebration for her championship win over Hikaru Shida at Double or Nothing. This should be just a really solid promo, and then something that indicates where she's going next. Wouldn't be surprised to see Statlander or Thunder Rosa potentially interrupt this and set up a match for themselves, or maybe just someone random because they like to do something like that. Like I wouldn't be shocked to see Layla Hirsch come out and put in a challenge where Britt is like, okay,
cool. She looked
and
great
then,
on Elevation last night. That's the match I got.
yeah, so that's just where I see them potentially going because she's someone that picks up a win, and then that's why, like wins in AEW tend to make sense with people like that. You don't think about it on Monday when you're watching Dark Elevation, but then Dynamite on Friday this week, you're like, oh wow, Layla's out there. That makes sense.
Yeah, because it's not like you need. Well, also like Statlander, I feel like wouldn't be like, oh, everybody's expecting Statlander. I feel like everybody's expecting Thunder Rosa. I feel like you and me are expecting Statlander because it makes so much sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was Statlander, but like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone like Layla Hirsch. That makes a lot of sense too. Like there are a lot of women on who have been appearing on Elevation. Like you said, we always know who are going to win those matches. But what that means is that people who are signed are getting wins and racking up wins in the rankings, and that makes them tread higher and higher.
And it just leads to a good first defense for Britt against someone who's making their run up the rankings somewhat, and I think it would just make a good amount of sense, so I wouldn't be mad at it at all. So it could be interesting. We'll see. And it's just what they do with their championships. Once in a while, someone maybe ranked third or fourth will get a championship opportunity just to get a chance. So we could see that. Or maybe we just see Shida come out and get her rematch invoked.
I was thinking that too. I don't know if they do rematch clauses in AEW. I don't feel like anyone's done one. Chris Jericho would have been, right?
Mox might have. I feel like they might have mentioned Mox had one and perhaps wasn't able to utilize it early because he might have been injured or something. That could be me just making everything I just said up. But I think he had one and they just were able to weasel him out of it. But I'm not sure. I also think Jericho might have had one. But again, that's something in wrestling where it's just like we use it when we need it. And I wouldn't be mad at them for doing that if they ever needed to. And Shida is someone, of course, who would make sense. She was champion for a year. Give her a rematch. Maybe that's a way to really build up next week's Dynamite. Like maybe they see the rating come out from Dynamite last week. Can't do so much for this Friday, but next Friday, let's do Jungle Boy Kenny. Let's do Shida Baker too. Like let's go all out, so to speak, for next Dynamite.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the main event, we have the Young Bucks defending the AEW World Tag Team Championships in a match that quite literally makes no sense in the world to me.
Who cares?
These are the moments where people really just bury the rankings and have to ask themselves how this makes sense. And perhaps, again, I'm wrong. Maybe
this isn't for the title, right?
You're right. It says a non-title match. Okay, when I had first saw this match announced, I thought it was a title match. And to me, that was so stupid. Like, Pac just lost his match for a championship, why would he then get another championship match? I don't know why I thought this was a title match. Maybe the graphic just looked like it, but no, I'm glad to know that you are right and I am wrong.
Well, regardless, this match, if it was a tag title match, I would not have cared because I
I
would
would
have
have
stuck my
been
nose up,
heated.
pretended it didn't happen, and been like, I don't care because Pac is in a title match, and also Young Bucks rule, they get to defend the titles again. And also, this match is a banger. Like, this match is going to rule. I cannot wait to see. One, people were really, really over for Penta. Like, I more than I expected. When he came out in the Battle Royal, like, they popped really hard for Penta. And I can't wait to see how they react with Penta and Alex Abrahantes, because I can't wait to see that in front of a live crowd. Alex Abrahantes is just smiling, being like, Penta says, fuck
Right.
you and your mother. And whatever you'll do. But Pac and Penta as a team, they rule. The Young Bucks are great stylistic match. Like, they have so much chemistry, all these guys. This is going to be a banger, and everybody should tune into Dynamite to watch this.
To any of our parental listeners, I apologize for AJ's needed use for random vulgarity on behalf of
That's what
Alex
Alex does.
Abrahantes. I don't know if he goes that hard on Dynamite though. So
He
I'm
should.
just letting the parental viewers who might have some kids tuned in the back seat or something know. We apologize. It's not always PG on the All Elite Too Sweet Elite podcast. But yes, I'm excited for this match. I think it should be a great match. I'm much more excited about it now that it's not a championship match, because who knows? Maybe Pac wins here. You could continue the Elite versus everyone type of story, now transitioning to this tag team sort of taking the reins. Wouldn't be mad at that. Would love to see Penta really get an opportunity to shine some more when that Cody feud sort of seemed to be disrupted, and I'm not mad that it was, but would like to see maybe a feud with the Young Bucks now for the tag team titles.
That'd be cool. Because I
And
mean,
hopefully Phoenix can come back soon. No shade on Pac, but
No.
I would love to see like the
agree.
tag team of Penta and Phoenix back together, which
Word.
is so cool, right? Because for a long time I was like, man, I really just want to see them each get a singles run. And Phoenix, more so than Penta for sure, has gotten a lot more opportunity as a singles guy. But now I'm ready for them to go back as a tag team and kind of do what they do best.
Also, I was gonna say, if you make me pick which one I want Pac to team up with, I want it to be Phoenix, not Penta, because they both do more flippy stuff.
Well, and it's like Pac is, while he does more flippy stuff, he's like a strong base for Phoenix to do the flippy stuff. Whereas Penta, it's like it's cool how they can change the dynamic as a team very simply by just switching out between any of the three. I think it's a
And
very
to
different
that
team,
end, I
so.
like the Death Triangle a lot still. Like, I think it's a cool stable. And I don't think it's a stable like the Dark Order is a stable, or Pretty Peter Avalon stable is a stable. It's like, it's more of a team, really. It's a trio. It's like, it's SCU kind of. And I like that. I just like that idea of, like, not every stable needs to be a big group of guys who are going to fuck people. Like, it can just be, like, these three badasses who are, like, going to kill people, which is great. And they
I
do.
agree.
And I feel like it wouldn't be ridiculous for Pac and Penta to win this either, which is why I'm extra excited for it. Because
Yeah,
it's not
you
a title
have-
match.
It's a non-title match. You have Mox or Eddie or both get
Yeah.
involved and cost them the match and lead to a match between both teams down the line. It's a good way to book two different things. Maybe Gallows and Anderson get involved and accidentally cost the Bucks. Like, there's so much you could do here. So I'm very, very much interested in this match, and I'm very glad that it's not a title match, because it just makes more sense. There's more build to it, and I'm glad you were able to correct me, because I would have just overlooked that entirely had we not. So yeah, Dynamite looks pretty stellar, though. I think, especially, if they add one or two more matches to the card like they typically do, it's going to be an interesting show.
Or even just, like, cool-ass promos or announcements, or who knows. Because, like you said, they're probably going to make that show with Jungle Boy and Kenny pretty big. And so it would make sense if they started announcing a big card for it, or, like, Mark Henry comes out and says something huge is going to be on that show.
Yeah, like, if we don't see Hangman on this show, I would anticipate him to be, like,
Darby
booked
too.
in a really cool match for the next show. So, yeah, I think that this week's Dynamite is good, and probably leads into one of those Dynamites where we're like, wow, this is a pay-per-view level Dynamite, which is almost easy to say already, just knowing that it's Kenny versus Jungle Boy. That's going to be a fun match to watch, even though we have a pretty solid idea who's going to win it.
Who do you think is Kenny's next opponent for the pay-per-view?
Hangman.
I think it's Darby.
That would be
And
very cool, but
I know, like, I was thinking, like, Hangman makes sense, but, like, that's a little soon. And then I was, like, thinking, like, who's really hot right now? Arguably as hot as Hangman, and just came off the pay-per-view with the win also, Darby. And he has Sting in his corner. And it's like, that's a serious threat.
That is a serious threat, and you're not wrong. But it like, I'm and I don't want to be the guy, but I'm like, I'm tired of Kenny facing all these small guys to defend the championship. Like, let's get, because he's faced not this wasn't a title defense. He won a title here, but he faced Rich Swann. He's faced all these guys in AEW who are much smaller, and Pac and Orange Cassidy, and now Jungle Boy. It's like these are all very small, much smaller than your larger wrestlers. And I'm not saying I want to see Miro and Archer being the only ones get title matches. I appreciate how they're establishing this fact very early on in AEW, like the Rey Mysterios, if you will, can get title opportunities, and we've given it to 3 or 4 of them. Whereas in WWE, it took Rey Mysterio himself 10, 15 years to get that opportunity.
But but the adverse of WWE, you can get burnt out of like little guys, like you could get burnt out from big guys.
I'm just like, we get it, man. You guys are gonna do this. It's in my head. Let me get one Miro or Archer or someone of that side, Wardlow even, like randomly push him. Let me get a big guy.
Archer. I would be so fucking mad if it was Archer and they did it again to Archer. And
that would be rough.
You'll lose to Jon Moxley and then you'll lose to Kenny. It'll be great.
That would be tough. Or Hangman, like, and I'm gonna be itching for that one for however long until we get it. And that's obviously Endgame, if you will, and that's why I would like to see it sooner, right? So that way, because I don't think it's Endgame. I think that those two have a. It's hard to say it early on, but it's like the Okada Kenny effect, where they just have such a freaking great match that they have to have another one. And I think that comes with maybe Hangman doesn't win the first one like everyone is anticipating. Maybe when that match is announced, it's not the end of Kenny's run like everyone is thinking. So I would really love to see that sooner rather than later, because that's how you kind of get the wheel spinning for that. The longer it takes for Hangman to get an opportunity, I feel like is the longer or the larger of a chance that it's not going to happen that way. And it doesn't have to be that way, but I would like it.
My thinking is you don't want to do Hangman right now, because if you do Hangman, I feel like he already lost to Kenny in the tournament. And if you have him lose again clean, that looks like, okay, he just can't beat Kenny, which is fine. You can like run it back later and like way later, like a few months later.
Well, we've seen them now do heel stuff where Kenny can beat him by being a heel, by cheating.
But like then you're having him beat him like with a Don Callis or whatever again, and it's like every match is gonna be that way. I don't know. I feel like you give him to Darby and Darby loses clean and no one's like, oh, that sucks. But I mean it sucks, but it's like you can have him lose in a cool ass 30-minute match to Kenny and everybody's gonna be like, oh, that was fucking awesome.
I will say, in the world of AEW, that is probably one of the biggest matches that they can make right now in terms of just guys that they've built up in Darby and guys that are the guy in Kenny. That's one of the biggest matches you can make. Now, I don't know what that does to Darby's run right now as one of the biggest built-up guys if he comes up short. And I don't think that it's something that would be damaging to him, because you would anticipate that to be like a 30-minute banger where he looks great even in loss. But right now, coming off the loss as the champion, going into a feud with Kenny, losing again would be tough. But I think it would be a very compelling feud and could be some of the best shit we see in terms of just match. Like, Kenny is poised to, like, even the Jungle Boy match is like, I'm so excited to see him wrestle this guy, because it's a perfect guy for him to wrestle and just do different stuff with and have a great match. So where we're at with Kenny as champion, and it's because he's fighting these smaller guys that I'm able to say this, so I almost contradict myself from a couple minutes ago. But I'm still I'm intrigued with where they're going with everyone right now, and that's why I'm most excited about Dynamite this week. So
yeah, because it's just like, oh man, what are they gonna do? And what sucks about this Dynamite is it's probably gonna be like, we're probably gonna find out the next week. Yeah. But I want to find out now.
For sure. But everything has been very entertaining, and Tony Khan is known to throw in a twist there. That's why I'm always speculating some random person showing up, because they do some crazy shit where randomly Kenta shows up. So but I think we could see some interesting stuff as they try to keep people's attention on Dynamite and recognize that Fridays are a little bit harder to get people tuned into. So what can we do that is entertaining or just a little bit more exciting than normal? But that's it. That's what we got for this week, AJ. We've covered everything AEW related. Anything we forgot or that you would like to tell the people before we close out the show?
No, I got to do my Darby theory. That's what I really wanted to do.
It's a good theory. It's a good theory. We'll see what happens. We'll see whose theory comes true. If either of them, maybe they just throw us a curveball. We have no idea. Maybe they cross promote the Andrade match for a couple of weeks. Like,
That'd be cool.
Who knows what happens? So I'm excited about what AEW has been doing. Obviously, coming off of an amazing pay-per-view, leading into Dynamite this week, it's very easy to be like, I'm pumped to tune in. Will be interesting to see how their audience translates this week, because typically after pay-per-views you get a big audience, but that's usually when your show's earlier in the week, not a whole almost week later. So I'm still excited nonetheless. I'll be tuned in. We will be back next Tuesday to talk about it, run down the card and next week's card, and give our entire thoughts on the show, because next week's Dynamite is also on Friday. So that's everything we got. You can catch the podcast, or AJ, let them know where to find you. Did you let them know where to find you?
No, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
You can find me on Instagram at Andrew Kazir, on Twitter at 2SweetElite. You can find the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. We are on Instagram at All Elite Everything. And you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/All Elite Podcast. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, brother. We appreciate everybody for tuning in and supporting the podcast every week. Until next time.
Bye.